But in the spirit of being, because we're all friends here, being really frank, I think that it's fair to say that in a lot of cases, we've been around for 18 years, but since our national launch in 2011, it's evolved that, I think too much of Meet the Need has been used transactionally. Like for the holiday season, our systems are going gangbusters across the nation. We're seeing, events going on. We're seeing, drives going on, case management for families and backpacks and toy drives and all these kind of things are happening. It's amazing how much happens to Meet the Need nationally, but it gets too seasonal and it gets too event centric. And so we've been thinking for a long time along the lines of kind of when helping hurts and how to get a little less transactional and because, transactions or kind of, seasonal and event centric kinds of compassion don't really create and breed transformation. And that's what we're looking for, right? We're all looking for people's lives to change dramatically, to come to Christ, to live very differently, to become disciples, make more disciples, have the Lord's math back in place again. So we've been thinking about that a lot. And so when COVID-19, the coronavirus came along, as we blog about this and build solutions that are more discipleship driven, and we're trying to think about how do we conform Meet the Needs solutions to be more relationship driven, more dignifying than often transactional assistance, becomes. We see, COVID-19, we don't want this to be a situation where once again, churches step up and do a lot of things, for those struggling and during the pandemic. And then all of a sudden, at some point, this kind of winds down and we go back to business as usual. And people will wonder, where's the church now? We're still hurting and struggling. Where's the church now? We don't want that to be happening. I know no one on this call wants that either. So we're, hoping for that this maybe is a catalyst, for change longer term. And along those lines too, we've been, you may not know this, but for 2.5 years, Meet the Need has been working on a very large and very time-consuming, expensive project that we're excited about to build a new artificial intelligence platform. And the AI system is going to basically move towards that when helping hurts philosophy of allowing families to build circles of support around themselves, to pull in family, to pull in friends, to pull in churches, ministries, service providers, to kind of plot their own path to a better future versus just going from place to place, asking for help. It really is a return back to Meet the Need's roots. I don't know if many of you know this, but 18 years ago, Meet the Need was called God Will. And essentially it was just that. It was families who would communicate their needs to our network, and we would communicate those needs back to local churches so that they could wrap around these families and be there for them longer term. But as I mentioned, we have kind of evolved a little bit towards, unfortunately, where churches and ministries oftentimes use us for seasonal kinds of things and event types of things. And so we want to get back to our roots, God will kind of roots, and get to the point where we're empowering families to, in a more dignified way, to figure out a solution alongside the church and alongside of the believers. So what we're finding is, and this is my segue into, what is love your neighbor, because it almost is like this perfect Lord's timing kind of segue from this, what's become institutionally driven, administratively driven, current Meet the Need, coming into this new phase of artificial intelligence, the new platform. Love your neighbor is almost like this interim step where when this pandemic came along, we realized we had to scramble and move quickly to put in place a solution. The opportunity was there to put in place a solution where we could allow, for example, for a church to see a map, essentially like a footprint of where their members live, and allow the members to be able to post needs for those neighbors back anonymously, back to the church, the overall body, to see who could help. And that's essentially what this is. Love Your Neighbor is a mapping solution that allows for anonymous, private communication back to the overall body to see who has the skills, the interest to meet those emotional, financial, or other kinds of needs that those families, may have that live around them. And it's just neat how this evolution of meeting is occurring, and God's, putting in place the opportunity for us to be able to bridge into what we're hoping is kind of a full empowerment solution with the artificial intelligence. And as far as the why, love your neighbor. We do hope that that COVID-19 could spark a revival. I don't know if any of you read my blog. We've been blogging for 5 years now about this, kind of church reform and getting the church to be more prayer, care, share centric, more discipleship centric, more externally focused, about getting folks to share the love of Christ with those around them through showing his love, which is Jesus's model. He healed and fed, and then he said who he was. And I often joke in my presentations that you can't out-preach Jesus. I'm sure, Pastor, you can bring it Sunday morning, but you're not going to out-preach Jesus. And he felt it necessary to heal and feed before he said, who he was, which is the gospel. So we see an opportunity with the church being scattered. We can't meet in the building right now, to be a little bit less facility-oriented, building-centric, and weekend-oriented, and take on a more biblical view of church, which is the living stones. Christ is the cornerstone, but it's all of us that are the body of Christ, and the hands and feet, and could be in our neighborhoods, right now. But we're finding out that I think we're all realizing, to our dismay in some cases, that our members, now that are scattered, maybe aren't equipped as well as we thought they would be or should be to share their faith or to answer tough questions, but typical questions that our neighbors tend to have. I mean, the people are more open right now to spiritual conversations. You've probably seen this, but the Google searches for the word prayer are higher than ever. And so people are looking for answers right now. And we could be taking advantage of opportunities to share our faith if we had been better equipped. So maybe there are those that, if they were a little less concerned with self-preservation and a little more, focused on self-sacrifice, faith rather than fear, would be out there more courageously, sharing our faith. And so I think what the pandemic has done is expose some of the flaws in an institutionally centric, conventional church growth models. But there is momentum already. I think it's already coming. I think it's now even greater towards a more discipleship, compassion, evangelistic kind of shift of responsibilities and expectations, back to those in the pews, versus saying, everybody come to our church, just invite, responsibilities stop for many churches at just, hey, invite your friends to come, let the professionals handle evangelism, and you just invite them to come. I think there's a little counter movement right now against that. And so when it comes to who, we're trying to reach out with Love Your Neighbor to, it's maybe those, in part, pastors who are maybe somewhat, the light bulb's kind of gone on. They're maybe a little bit repentant. They've seen that they could have done more to disciple. They could have, and they want to rectify that now. They want to see if this kind of thing happens again, where, we're kind of relegated back to our neighborhoods and homes, or maybe just in general, that's how life should be. We're, the church back in our neighborhoods, we're pastors of our neighborhoods, which is how I consider myself in my neighborhood. I think if you asked around, that's what they would say. Who's the first family there when things go wrong? It would be us. And that's something I think more of us should be living out, and more of our members should be living out. But we got to equip them, better to share their faith, and to be, thinking about not closing the garage when we get home from work, but thinking about how our neighbors are doing and how we can reach out to them. So being the church scattered right now is the perfect time for that. And then even church admins, I mean, they were already overwhelmed before the pandemic hit. Now, if they're local missions focused and conscious, which all of you are, these churches are thinking about how can we do more, but they have an inability to share what those needs are. And so you've got to almost turn over some responsibility to members to take that work on the staff, because there's no way the staff can handle, and the church's budget can withstand that many demands, for help. So institutions just can't solve all the problems. We got to empower individuals we hope this is a wake-up call, and that's what we're trying to put in place with Love Your Neighbor, which Tanya will be going through the details of how it works, but I want to kind of explain the why we're doing this. But neighborhood leaders, what if we had small groups, fellowship-oriented small groups that became kind of prayer, care, share neighborhood groups that thought about their role differently in those neighborhoods where they meet, or back on their own streets. And then church members, again, that idea of being, pastors of your neighborhood, being on the front line of defense against, when things are going wrong, and being vocal and being out there, with our neighbors to especially at a time like this. This could go on, for a while. It's not like this is all of a sudden going to clean itself up and we're all going to go back to business as usual. And maybe we shouldn't go back to business as usual. And then finally, the when, just like everybody else, like all of you, we scrambled. When this virus hit, we knew we had to do something. We couldn't just sit back and not respond. We were built for such a time as this. And so we felt the need to do something to step into this gap. And our entire team has been working extremely hard for weeks. We even put some projects, and we have many projects we're working on: foster care, hunger relief, homelessness, new cities, there's a ton of things we've been doing, but we put some things on hold to make room to roll out and design and build this Love Your Neighbor platform. And what's really neat about this, the Lord also provided in that this is essentially a repurposed app from a Christian movie, where we built his platform for the movie. It was about a football game where a Christian school against a juvenile detention center, where the juvenile detention center, of course, had no fans, no parents, no cheerleaders. And so the Christian school decided, you know what, we're going to put half of our cheerleaders, fans, parents on their side and go cheer for them. And so the movie idea was, and the movie has been, filmed and still being filmed, but the app basically, or the idea is that, to pay it forward before you get to your car, you leave the theater, to pay it forward and find opportunities around you to go, serve those in need. It was a very map-centric, Google Map-centric kind of solution. It mapped in perfectly for what we're doing here with Love Your Neighbor. So anyway, this is what we're rolling it out now. It's happening now. It's available now. Our team's worked very hard. It's now ready for prime time. And so we're excited to, again, roll it out to an exclusive kind of smaller number of people, and then see what happens, as the Lord always does, gets the word out to many more people. But we hope, in large part through you, and as you begin to roll out Love Your Neighbor in your city and your ministry and your church, then, we'll see what God does. But thanks for the chance to share a little bit. Looking forward to connecting with many of you and all of you, here again soon personally. And Tanya, just take it back over and walk through more of the application. I'll be here, obviously, through the whole call to take questions later on if there's anything that anyone wants to ask about our direction, what Meet the Needs is doing, where we're heading, or about Love Your Neighbor specifically.
Great, thanks, Jim. Yeah, we're getting some questions that are coming in, and I'll be sure to answer those questions throughout the webinar. But now we're able to join into a lot of the, how does all this come about and how does it all work? Whoops, let me back up. For your organization, whether it be your church or your city reaching organization. Let me back up a little bit in my presentation here. And we'll get into the how now. So how you can learn more, even outside of this webinar. I mean, this webinar is a great way to find out about how to implement, but you're going to need to be able to take this information and share it with others. We did produce a video. It's one that, takes advantage of everyone being at home and being safe at home orders, and we have some testimonies on there of different organizations that are starting to implement Love Your Neighbor. But there is a 5-minute video, a great resource to bring people up to speed on what it is that you're trying to do with your church or with your city reaching organization. And there's a button on our homepage at meettheneed.org where you can learn more. It says learn more about the Love Your Neighbor platform. And in that, we give you a plethora of information. There's actually several quick start guides, and we've divided them out by the different primary users of love your neighbor. And I actually am seeing a typo in this screen. It should be love your neighbor, not Baber. But it is meettheneed.org/love your neighbor. And the first quick start guide is for church administrators. And as a church, you want to be outreaching or have your members outreaching their neighborhoods and their neighbors and finding out what there is, what needs there are. And whether we're talking about during COVID-19 or ongoing, I mean, this isn't about just this time period for now. This is any time that you are looking to disciple your members and equip them to go out and meet the needs of their neighbors. The first quick start guide is for the church administrators to be able to know how to do that. And we give you some action steps in that. And then you're going to be equipping your neighborhood leaders. And that's the second quick start guide that we have with some action steps. And then your church members are going to be the ones out actually meeting those needs, bringing in, delivering items to the neighborhood leaders, or connecting to do service for those neighbors. But we give you a quick start guide for each user. So you as a church or you as a city reaching organization have resources to help you to equip each one of those users in your organization. So let's dive into each user and what it looks like for the next steps as far as getting Love Your Neighbor and implementing it for your organization. So a church comes in and they want to register. You go to meettheneed.org, Love Your Neighbor. There is a registration button right there for whether you're a current Meet the Need church or you're a new Meet the Need church. It doesn't matter. You can both access Love Your Neighbor. If you're a current Meet the Need church, you would just simply log into your Meet the Need account. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment once you log in. But if you're new to Meet the Need and your church hasn't registered, then you'll want to register your church. It's very simple. Really, it's clicking the button register first and then filling out a quick form just about your church and some basic information and some personal information to create your login, and then signing a statement of faith. Then very quickly, you're taken to your church dashboard. And for Love Your Neighbor, whether you're with Love Your Neighbor or you're with Meet the Need, it's all one dashboard. But what we've done is we've added kind of like a new module to Meet the Need, and it's in this blue button up here called Love Your Neighbor. And when you click on the Love Your Neighbor button, what you will get is a landing page of 3 steps that you as a church can take to implement Love Your Neighbor. The first is to invite your neighborhood leaders to register. And what you're given is a link here. It's a link just for your church. Every church has a different one, but it is a link for you to take and ask your neighborhood leaders to register. Now, those neighborhood leaders, they may be just people that you've identified that you know are connectors within your church and within their communities, and you want to empower them to go and meet with their neighbors and find out what the needs are. Maybe it's small group leaders that you've already identified and trained, and you're discipling them to, to really be the neighborhood connectors like they should be. But you as a church are the ones that will designate who you want to be posting needs, and those are the neighborhood leaders. So we give you a link for you to give to them to register, and that's going to connect them to your church directly. And we also give you, that's number 2, is to invite your members to search and commit to needs. And we give you a link in number 2. It's the map link for all of the neighborhoods that are going to be created underneath of your church, and only the neighborhoods that are designated by your church. We found that churches want to be showing needs, but they want to be showing needs of the neighborhood leaders that they've designated, that they've posted. And so we've created the map to be kind of segregated to just your church and the neighborhoods that your neighborhood leaders have identified. And then, of course, as a church, you have access to reports to see which neighborhoods have registered, who the neighborhood leaders are, the contact information, and we'll dive a little bit more into that reporting here in just a moment. But all of that is available for you as a church. So you could go and register. It takes less than 2 minutes, and in less than 10 minutes, you can have the link for your neighborhood leaders to register, the link for the map to put on your website. And what's great about this map is that you can private label it to look like your website, or you can leave it a more generic header up there. But either way, you've got access to do that through your Meet the Need dashboard. This is what the neighborhood map looks like up close. Once you invite your neighborhood leaders to register their neighborhoods and they actually post their first need, or actually if they don't even post the need yet, if they just register the neighborhood will show up on your map. And then when they post needs, this view needs button becomes activated and the needs that that neighborhood has posted will show. And so someone can look real quickly and go, oh, I know Gulfview Estates, that's the neighborhood next to me, or that's my neighborhood. Let's see what they need in there. And they'll be able to see those needs and meet those needs. And then they get a list view of those needs and detailed views of that. We'll look at what that looks like from the church members' perspective here in just a minute. Here's the aggregate report that the church admin gets. If you go to view volunteer needs reports, aggregate report, this is the up close of the list of all the neighborhoods and the contact person, the neighborhood leader's information. You can click manage and actually go to the dashboard of that neighborhood leader. And if for any reason you might need to deactivate a need or deactivate a neighborhood in general, you as the church admin have access to do that. So you're in complete control over what neighborhoods are showing on your map. You also have down here in the bottom left-hand corner export buttons to be able to export this data. If you need to sort it in a different way or upload it to a database, you're able to do that. So all the information is yours. As the neighborhood leader, it's really easy to register. Your church will give you that registration link that they had on their dashboard. It's a quick two-step process to fill out the form, to agree to the statement of faith, and then the neighborhood leader gets a dashboard, a limited dashboard just for their neighborhood. So like this is Gulfview Estates, they get a way to post needs and view reports, and they get their own Love Your Neighbor button, this blue button, which I think is on the next screen. Yeah, and in that blue Love Your Neighbor button, we give them 5 steps. Church admin had 3, neighborhood leader has 5, where they can, we give them encouragement and empowerment and how to connect with their neighbors. So one is to gather neighborhood needs. Well, to gather needs, you've got to get to know who your neighbors are. And I think, Rachel, this is one of the questions that you asked is, how do you actually connect with your neighbors? And we've given the neighborhood leaders this great resource. It's called, it's right here, what you can do to help neighbors despite social distancing. So it's related specifically to COVID and connecting with neighbors, but we give them 7 different ways, there's actually more than 7, but 7 different areas that they can connect with their neighbors and different ways that they can do that and be able to develop relationships, to gather needs. And those needs may be items that they need, it may be services, maybe it's an elderly woman who's living by herself and doesn't have any family around, and she needs something fixed. Well, it's really hard to get a contractor out to do something right now, and maybe there's someone in the neighborhood that could, fix a runny sink, runny faucet for her. And so, following COVID guidelines right now in this time, but being able to meet physical needs, but not just physical, emotional and spiritual, even financial, and then logistical, and trying to maneuver everyone around. We give your neighborhood leaders ways that they can gather those needs. So going back to the screen before, the second thing is to post neighborhood needs. We've made it, that's where Meet the Need comes in. We're the technology solution to help to get those needs posted and out to the members of the church. And here is how you post a need. The neighborhood leader would go in and choose post a need for volunteers or goods. They would select a category and subcategory. If most of you are already members of Meet the Need and this form looks familiar, we have reused the Meet the Need form where they would put in the title, the description, the number of volunteers or the number of items needed, and what type of need it is. And then that need will automatically show on the church's map of neighborhood needs to be seen on their website by church members. Then as church members, which I'll show you in just a moment what it looks like from a church member perspective, but those church members are able to see those needs, and all the needs are anonymous. We encourage the neighborhood leaders not to put neighbors' names in there or addresses to keep, to consider the physical safety of the neighbors, as well as always to consider the CDC guidelines and delivering those. But the neighborhood leader would be the one coordinating delivery back to the family that's needing the help. That just to limit the number of people that's interacting with the family, which usually in the past we'd be like, hey, let's everybody interact and get to know and build relationships. But with COVID, we want to make sure that guidelines are being followed and there are minimal interactions with multiple different people when delivering items. So that neighborhood leader is the designated person to coordinate the delivery between the church member and the family that's needing the item or the service. The fourth thing that the neighborhood leader can do is they can go in and check offers. And I'll show you in the church member section here in just a minute how you can post an offer. But church members can say, oh, hey, I want to post an offer of something that I have that someone might be able to use. And those offers will show up on the neighborhood leader's dashboard under My Account, View Offers. And in those offers, they can see what church members are wanting to offer. Maybe there's some books for a 4-year-old that they want to donate and give, but there wasn't a need necessarily posted for those books. Then the neighborhood leaders are the ones that are able to see those offers that are being posted. The public can't see those offers because we don't want this to become, a free-for-all and a Craigslist and I'm offering all this stuff and connecting, and everything goes through the neighborhood leaders. So there's a sense of security and safety and authenticity of what's being offered. The neighborhood leader has reports just like the church administrator does, but they have reports over their neighborhood. They can see the needs that have been posted, that they've posted, the details of those, be able to edit them, and they're also able to see the commitments that have been made for their neighborhood that they've posted. And there's a variety of reports and different ways that you can see those, and all of that is exportable just like it is in Meet the Need. Then we encourage the neighborhood leader to share needs. Needs are being shared on the church website and on the church social media posts, in church emails, in a variety of ways. But we also want the neighborhood leader to share needs. They can direct them back to the church website or the church social media places to see those, or the neighborhood leader actually gets a link of their own in the Love Your Neighbor button of just their neighborhood needs. So maybe they want to take that link and share it on, the Nextdoor app or their neighborhood's Facebook page and say, hey, my church is helping out. If anybody needs any help, let us know. Here's a link to needs in our neighborhood, and even get other neighbors involved in helping neighbors. It doesn't necessarily have to be just your church members that are helping neighbors, but getting neighbors to help neighbors and your family and friends to help your neighbors, and really empower the growth of relationships being fostered within the neighborhood. Church members, their view, this is the quick start guide for a church member, but they're able to see their particular neighborhood. They're able to view those needs in a list view. They're able to meet those needs, coordinate with the leader for delivery, receive automated emails just like we do with regular Meet the Need, share needs, and even post offers like I mentioned before. So let's walk through some of those. So a church member searches for needs. They see those needs. They click to select that particular need. Maybe they have a walker they're not using, or they can run errands for that elderly lady, or maybe there was a school desk that someone was needing and they have that. They would click on that need and quickly be able to see the details of that need. They'll see the neighborhood leader's name there. They won't see the family that it's posted for. They'll see the neighborhood leader's name and phone number and email and be able to connect directly with that neighborhood leader. But if they meet that need online, they will be asked to register or log in, and they'll be able to then receive emails. The emails that they receive is a confirmation email and reminders at 21/7 and 1 day prior to the need by date. But then they're able to coordinate with that neighborhood leader for delivery, and throughout the process, church members are encouraged to share that church map link with friends and family through social media to encourage needs to get helped more quickly. Of course, the more places that needs are being shared and those links are being shared, then the more likely that those needs are to be met more quickly. And I'd alluded to this previously, church members can also post offers. So if they're on the map looking for needs and they're not seeing a need for, like I mentioned earlier, like maybe books that they want to give, and no one's really posted a need for books, they can say, hey, I have these books to offer. And that process is very easy once they select down to a particular category and subcategory. If there's not a need for what they're wanting to post, then they can post that offer. It's very quick with putting in the category, subcategory, and a description of what they're offering and a quantity of that, and they log in so they know so the system knows who's posted it, and then the neighborhood leaders receive a notification to let them know that offers are waiting in their area. It's done by zip code and a miles radius, so that offers can be seen by neighborhood leaders and be connected. And then a neighborhood leader would look and go, oh, yeah, I was talking with a neighbor the other day and they were saying how they were having difficulty with their, 4-year-old or 8-year-old reading, and I'll connect them with that, with getting those books. And so it's a way to offer other items and services that may be useful within a neighborhood. Of course, we have Love Your Neighbor, which we're telling you about today, but we also have our core Meet the Need platform. And so any church or city reaching organization or ministry for that matter that joins Meet the Need, you have the 4 modules of Meet the Need, our regular modules: the volunteer and goods management, shared case management, events, and international missions on your dashboard. And what we've done is we just added Love Your Neighbor as basically another module up at the top, but it's all on your dashboard. You're not getting another account or another login. It's all the same login, all in one place. And we're staying true to the fact that Meet the Need really is the one-stop shop for all of your outreach efforts that you're led to do within your community, and Love Your Neighbor is just an extension of that. I had a question earlier. Someone had asked, how does this work into a city reaching organization? Dawn, I think you had asked that. And city reaching organizations are really, kind of the heartbeat of Meet the Need and have been for many years as far as reaching cities and reaching churches in different cities. And what we encourage city reaching organizations to do with Love Your Neighbor is to offer Love Your Neighbor as a gift to your churches, to your church network, and say, churches, we've been working with you for many years as your city reaching organization. We want to offer this to you to really mobilize and equip your people, your members, to go and serve their neighbors. And each church gets to register and gets their own unique map and their own solution to be able to really mobilize their members into the neighborhoods. So Don, I hope that answers your question, but this is just a way for you to give a gift during this time of crisis to your network. And we're here just to support you in that, and we'll be here with you to, to help promote that, and however you need to do it, we'll even host co-webinars with you. We're here to support you and Love Your Neighbor just like we have been with Meet the Need. Are there any other questions? I know I just covered a lot of information and I've tried to answer some of the questions as we went along, but if you have any others, feel free to type those in and we can get those answered. We have a lot available with Meet the Need. If you go to your dashboard, we have our training videos, and we'll put the Love Your Neighbor video in there as well, but we have videos to all of our modules, and we have our frequently asked questions. So feel free to go into those resources at any time on your dashboard and access those resources when you can. We have a lot of other webinars besides Love Your Neighbor. If you want to dive in further into any of our modules, we have a webinar on each one of them in the help button in the Meet the Need webinars page that we have set up, so feel free to access that. That's all of our recorded webinars. And we're very active in social media. We've got, meettheneed.org, our regular website, as well as meettheneed.org/loveyourneighbor to find out more about that. Jim Morgan, our president and founder, has a great blog that speaks to the culture of church on twice a month. Typically, he posts in that blog, and so it's a great resource to go and join. You have to join that separately, so you'll get updates for that. Very good resource. We have our newsletter that we send out periodically throughout the year, so if you have registered with Meet the Need, you're on that newsletter list. And of course, I mentioned our recorded webinars, and we're very active in all the social media platforms. So you can go and like us or join with us on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and LinkedIn too.
Well, Tanya, some questions are popping up now.
I do. I see that. Yeah. So Chris, you had asked the question of how does this help us collaborate with our churches on projects? Really, Jim, do you want to take this question and talk about projects and love your neighbor?
Yeah, so I mean, Chris runs the Dream Center actually in Tampa, and a fantastic organization, part of kind of came out of Grace Family Church. And as far as collaboration with churches, I mean, this is primarily meant to provide kind of a church the perspective on the footprint that they occupy, where their members are. But then again, we've been thinking about this a lot. It's a good question, Chris, because the way we see it is that it's not just a church, institutional brick and mortar church kind of based solution. It really could be for ministries or even, neighborhood people, groups of Christians who are in the same neighborhood to band together and think about, this neighborhood where you are. I know, Chris, can be a challenging area. I mean, there's a lot of poverty, high rates of kind of school, free lunch programs for the kids and things like that. A lot this fatherhood issues there. I know we talked about that a lot in the past, with you in the Dream Center. So, there is a need to band together and think about how we can support that neighborhood, and even in the fact that as volunteers that work with the Dream Center, are in that area, are aware of families that are struggling, kids that you're working with, their families have struggles. You could be communicating those needs of those families out to a broader base of, let's say, donors or other folks that aren't even in the local area, but or not even right there where you are located, but they could be supporting those families. And so you kind of become a church. I mean, there's a church obviously tied to the work you're doing, but you kind of almost turn that base of folks that are supporting your organization into their own church too, so they can step up and meet the needs of those families in the area, and you can communicate those needs to them. It's kind of how I see it. I think there's a little, we're adopting as time goes on a little looser definition of what church is to align more with what the Bible says the church is. And it's not, just that brick and mortar, facility. It really is us. And so there's a looser definition of the body of Christ than some would, have you believe.
Chris, hopefully that answers your question. If not, we can elaborate on that further offline through email. Melanie, you had asked the question as a church, Bay Life Church, also here in the Tampa area, you said, would your already registered users of the church be notified of the Love Your Neighbor needs? They wouldn't automatically be notified, but what you can do is go into your Bay Life dashboard and assign them to those neighborhoods. And then as their neighborhood, if you know what neighborhoods they're a part of, then as their neighborhood posts needs, they will get emails of their neighborhood posting needs, and then they'll be able to meet those. So you would need to assign those members to the neighborhoods. But members that are coming in new, they're going to be joining the church as a whole, and notifications go out automatically. Let's see. We had the question, here. Everett, you had asked, am I right in thinking that users that have offers or needs will have to register and agree to statement of faith? Neighborhoods might not be Christians. Yeah, we understand that, and we require that the church and neighborhood leaders agree to the statement of faith, the ones that are actually posting the needs and equipping the neighborhood leaders. But the end users, the church members or the members of the neighborhood that are interacting, they don't have to sign a statement of faith. End users, we presume they're coming through a church or through someone who is working with the church to get to the app to begin with. So the end users don't agree to a statement of faith. Only the ones that are the ones posting the needs agree to the statement of faith. Does that make sense? Hopefully. So it's just like the way Meet the Need works now. The end user doesn't have to sign that. Only the leaders and the ones actually interacting with the dashboard have to sign that. Let's see. It says here, can one neighborhood leader, this is from Jim Fubister down in Venice, Florida, can one neighborhood leader have 5 or 10 neighborhoods? How flexible are the boundaries for neighborhoods? Yeah, you can create as many neighborhoods as needed, and a user, say that a neighborhood leader is very influential and maybe there's 3 or 4 neighborhoods around them and those neighborhoods are, you know, pretty closely related. They could post needs. They can name it. They can even name it a region if they want to instead of a neighborhood name, and they can post needs for as far out as they want to, as far as the zip code and the miles radius, and those will show on the church on the church's map. So yeah, there's not really a limit to the number of neighborhoods a leader could have or how far out that neighborhood could be. We've kept that open.
Yeah, Jesus's definition of a neighbor in the Good Samaritan story was fairly loose, and ours can be fairly loose as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and Bob, I see your comment here. You said so neighborhood leaders are all vetted by their church. That was a question. And then the integrity, you know, is a huge issue for their role. And yes, we agree with that. And that's why we've done it. We've created the platform like this. The neighborhood leaders are designated by the church. And those are the ones that are posting the needs as they're out meeting with neighbors and building relationships. And so, yes, there is that sense of security and making sure that the needs are authentic that are being posted. And there's someone there that has been hopefully trained by the church and discipled by the church and how to share the gospel, you know, at the right time as needs are being met as well. Let's see, Doug, I have a question here from you. Is there a citywide view of churches and neighborhood leaders accessible to anyone? We don't have a link right now that would show all the churches in your area and all the neighborhoods in your area, but if that's something that you're interested in, we could look at doing a customization for you for that. If there's certain churches that you're working with and they want to be a part of a collaborative effort of showing that, we could work with you on that. Let's see, we got a couple more questions we can answer. How can, oh, this is from Bob as well, Bob Fox. How can a church use neighborhood leaders from another church or group of churches? Bob, I assume it's kind of like what Doug was asking, is there a citywide view? Like, can you see multiple neighborhood or see multiple churches and their neighborhoods on one map? And that's something that we would need to customize for you. Right now it's segregated by church and by the neighborhoods that church has posted.
I also think that there's not a need necessarily to set this up at, you know, only running through current kind of churches around town. You as a city movement, you know, could be doing your own thing to kind of become that larger church, you know, body, the universal church that we often think of and often referred to in scripture too. So you could be looking at this as a citywide movement that's not necessarily dependent on each individual church adopting this, but you as an organization, a city movement, you know, rally your network around being good neighbors, loving their neighbors, you know, wherever they are, and have your own map as a city movement across the whole city of all those places where your kind of quote unquote congregation, you know, your supporters, your kind of advocates and fans, you know, where they're located, and they're the ones posting needs, you know, for where they are. You're seeing the overall map, but it's not necessarily tied to, you know, individual churches. I mean, churches, it's great if they implement this too, but you could have your own solution rolled out as well as a city movement.
Yeah, for sure. Don, I think I answered your question on in the chat area. We are getting close to our closing time, so I want to make sure that we respect that. We've actually gone over just a little bit, but I wanted to make sure that we did answer a lot of those questions. If for some reason we did not get to your question, you can always email me at tnichols@meettheneed.org, and I'm putting that in the chat so that you have it. Or you can email Maurice Jackson. If he is your member service representative, you can email him directly as well at mjackson@meettheneed.org. We're both available to answer anything you had. And if we need to have another conversation with you specifically to talk about how you want to implement and maybe some ideas that you're having, maybe some unique ideas that we didn't think of and how to use the platform, we'd love to talk with you about that and work with you on implementing in even a unique way. All right, there's our information, your member service team, if you want to get a hold of us. And we thoroughly are thrilled at everyone that was able to join us, and we will send the recording out tomorrow. And be sure to take what you've learned and don't just sit on it, but share it. And let's mobilize our cities to serve Christ in ways that would glorify Him. Thank you, everyone, and have a blessed day.
Thank you. God bless you.